Welcome back, folks. And folks, our guest today can help each and every one of us. You know, yesterday's gone, tomorrow's not here. What are you doing right now? Our guest today is Josh Davis. Josh is a PhD. He received that PhD. He received his bachelor's degree from Brown University, his doctorate from Columbia University. He's a director of research for the Neuro Leadership Institute, a global institute dedicated to synthesizing scientific research and guiding its use in the business and leadership fields. Now, Josh Davis just came out with a new book. Get it on Amazon. And check this out, folks. 2 awesome hours. Science-based strategies to harness your best time and get the most important work done in 2 awesome hours. Josh Davis, welcome to TFNN.
Thank you so much for having me here.
You know, I'll tell you, when this came across my desk, right, I said to myself, there's nothing, I mean, just as I said, yesterday's gone, tomorrow's not here. What are you doing right now? So talk to us and tell us, first off, what the book's about. And I know you do a lot of scientific research, you know, to get to this basis. So talk to me.
Yeah. So, you know, what I was noticing, it's the same thing that so many of us were noticing, that I was working too much, my friends were working too much, my wife was working too much. You know, good people care about what we're doing, you know, and we're just putting in so much time, and at the end of the day, feeling bad about ourselves anyway, that we can't seem to get it all done. We can never meet all the obligations that we have.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a result, it's creating this environment that really doesn't need to be there and shouldn't be there. And from my perspective, you know, I think it's really, it just wasn't right. So I really wanted to see what I could do to change that for myself and for those around me.
Okay.
And also ideally for, you know, the more that we can get this to be a change in the culture, then, you know, then it builds on itself and we can support one another. And so one of the things that I was noticing was that, you know, when we get really, you know, overwhelmed with work.
Yes.
Let me, you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong if you don't think this happens to you, but, you know, when we get really overwhelmed with work, we tend to just think, all right, I've got to buckle down. I've got to stay focused. I've got to, you know, do nothing but stay on task, and I need to work more hours. It's just there's so much work, I have to work more hours in the day. How else am I going to get it done? And it's a perfectly rational, logical thing to say based on a model, though, of a computer, based on something that isn't human. A computer will give you the same output every time you run it. So you might as well just run it as often as you can.
Sure.
But it's a terrible solution for a human being, for a biologically based system.
Because then we're talking about a peak performance versus a mediocre performance versus just showing up, right?
Exactly. We don't perform nearly the same at different times. But because we don't perform nearly the same, what that means is that we can do extraordinary things at some times and really figure out that challenging puzzle of who you're going to hire or have on the team, or how to map out a chapter, something really big and important, right? We can bang that out in a couple of hours sometimes, but at other times it could take us days and we'll get nowhere. So because of that, I started thinking, well, you know, if we can do this sometimes,
yes,
then there must be conditions that help create those periods of really high effectiveness.
Right.
And so I started looking at the neuroscience and the psychology research to discover what are the conditions that help us create those periods of really high effectiveness.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what the book is about, is sort of learning those things. And what at its highest level, what I discovered was that many of the things that help to create those conditions are also the things that lead to greater work-life balance.
You know, we just, well, right here, recognize daily decision points and tackle what matters most.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so most of the time, we're on autopilot. You know, and the best example of autopilot is when you're driving and, you know, you don't even realize where you're going until all of a sudden there's a roadblock, or, you know, something doesn't work the way it normally does. We get into autopilot all the time, though. You know, your morning routine, you're on autopilot. Your commute, you're on autopilot. You get to work, even right now, this conversation, I don't need to be consciously monitoring a lot of what I'm doing. I'm in conversation mode. I'm thinking about how I want to make my points and communicate to you effectively. I'm not thinking about all those other things that I need to accomplish in my life right now. It's only...
Okay,
yeah,
so
sorry,
that focus that you're talking about, right now,
mm-hmm.
that focus is an important part of this 2 hours per day?
Well, understanding that kind of focus is important in this sense, that when we're on autopilot, we can't just choose to snap out of autopilot.
Right.
So because we can't just choose to snap out of it, it's very important that we start on the right tasks. And I don't know about you, but I've definitely found myself starting on some tasks that weren't the most important thing to do. I spend 2 hours on email and then say, wait a second, that wasn't what I really needed to get to today. What I needed to get to was to finish, drafting this paper or something like that. So these decision points then are rare moments in the day when we come to a crossroads, when autopilot can no longer handle things well. That's when we bring on more conscious resources. That's when we bring online more of the prefrontal cortex, the resources that are going to help us choose what action to take. At that point, we can actually, get started on the right task. It's the old advice: do what's important, not urgent.
Yes.
But there's the question of how do we do that? Well, the key is recognizing when we can actually choose what task to do. Decision points come right before a task. They come right after a task is ended. And this one is often surprising. They come when you've been interrupted. It can be really annoying to be interrupted, but once that person finally leaves, rather than just getting back to what you're doing, they've created the opportunity here for a decision point. It can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like you're not productive, but that's just because you're more aware, more self-aware in that moment than usual, because you're not on autopilot.
Yes.
So you're aware of the time passing. You're aware of feeling unproductive. It's very tempting to just say, let me just start on something. But that's exactly the wrong thing to do in that moment. We need to savor those moments. They don't last very long. And that's when we have the capability to start on what really matters. So we need to take a moment when we have a decision point until we can get clear in our minds and remember what actually matters.
What's intriguing is that one of the first books that I started out in the restaurant business years ago, but I wanted to, build a whole bunch of everything like anyone else, right? And Ray Kroc had written this book, The Making of McDonald's, and one of the things that blew my, that I've stayed with for all these years, and it's only 100 pages, and what it was is that he started McDonald's like at 56 or something, and he knew he didn't have a huge amount of time, and he was explaining the focus aspect, and it was so cool, though, he was explaining that he absolutely had to be able to turn his mind off when he stopped work so he could get some sleep, so he can get up in the morning and go at it again. And me personally, that was one of the best things that, because you can turn it off in a second. I thought that was pretty neat. Can you just hang with us for a second? We get a short break, all right? We're going to be coming right back because this is so intriguing. It's just absolutely awesome.
Yes, of course.
Thank you so much. You stay right there. Market-wise right now, folks, we get the Dow right now is down $1.80. We get the NASDAQ off 10. You got the S&Ps off 2.5. We're going to be coming back with Josh Davis. And Josh just came out with a great book, folks. 2 awesome hours. Science-based strategies to harness your best time and get the most important work done in 2 hours. We'll find out what they're saying. You only have to work 2 hours a day, or do you harness the best thinking and best focus in those 2 hours so you really get something accomplished and move forward? Josh Davis, Tom O'Brien, we're coming right back, folks. Welcome back, folks. Our guest today is Josh Davis. He just came out with a great book, 2 awesome hours. You can go over to Amazon and get it right now. And Josh, in between the break here, my son just came in to me and said to me, yeah, you can get some of this guy's stuff. Work smarter, not harder. I bang out about 70 hours a week. But I have a good time doing it. But I had to tell you that, man, because in between the break, that was the conversation, man.
Yeah. That's great.
So, hey, let me ask you, inside this book also, you talk about properly feeding yourself and moving your body to set yourself up for success.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is one of the things that comes from really understanding our biological nature, that if you think about those tasks, the ones that really matter, and this, by the way, that's a general theme throughout the book.
Okay.
We're probably better off thinking about, okay, what really matters on my schedule? How can I set up a couple of hours? Maybe It's just 1 hour, maybe it's 3 hours. The number 2 is there's nothing magical about it. It's just that it's achievable for anyone.
Right.
and achievable right away, right after reading the book. So it's how do I set up a couple of hours where I can really get that important thing done? Maybe there's an important presentation and it's scheduled at a specific time.
Yes.
How do I really show up for that? Or maybe there's some project that you can work on at any time. How do I set it up so that whatever time I've chosen, I'm really at my best? And one of the things that we can do that's extremely reliable for reducing anxiety. So either if you had too much anxiety coming into the situation that you need to get rid of before you go into the big event, or maybe it's because you want to reduce your anxiety during that big work session, is moderate exercise. And this is a different way of thinking about exercise than usual. Most of the time, the narrative about exercise is that down the road, it'll make you look better, or it'll keep you healthier, and through that, indirectly, there'll be less stress and you'll work better. There's truth to that, but it's not the same kind of immediate use. And there's also maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work on any particular day. But there's also a huge amount of research. We're talking meta-analyses have been done looking at more than 100 studies, for example,
yes,
on the effects of exercise in the short term. How will it affect me, my mood and my concentration in the next half hour, in the next 5 hours, over a very short period of time, right away? It's one of the more reliable things we know. And moderate, by the way, is also a little different than what many of us have, tend to go for. We tend to really try to show our limits and push ourselves.
Sure.
But moderate exercise is actually more effective for this, where it's just 20 minutes on the treadmill, 10 minutes walking up and down the stairs, 40-minute brisk walk, something that'll get you to sweat a little bit, get you to breathe heavily, but you're not killing yourself. That is extremely reliable for reducing anxiety, which will then make it easier to stay focused and be present and let the small things go and concentrate. Really help you to reset, a very reliable reset. So it's great when you're going into that period to set up that great period, but also if you've just been through something really tough, really trying, then is a great way to reset afterwards. So you can then
that's
have
a great
some time
word, reset.
for the afternoon.
That reset's a good word. What's interesting is that everyone always says breathe, but it is so important. When people breathe, something happens. I mean, those deep breaths, they can bring you down.
They absolutely do.
Make your workplace work for you. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So a lot of the things that are in our workplace, we actually do have some control over. And in the book, it was important for me to look for those things that even if somebody else chooses where we work and the layout of the office, that these things are still within our control. So these are the things that really matter. One of them that, for me, has made a big difference. So as I was learning about things for the book, then I would start putting it into practice, because why not, right? Yeah. So one of the things that I really like is understanding why it is that clutter matters. That you may think well, does it matter if I've got a really cluttered desk when I sit down to work?
Okay.
There's actually a study showing what people tend to leave on their desk when they're leaving things out. And things that people leave out, for the most part, are meant to be reminders. And now if we think about, what are they reminders of? It's those things that we didn't finish because they were hard or because we didn't know how to do them. And once they're sitting there, there's some social obligation associated with each one, or some embarrassment that we haven't gotten to it yet. And then if you take that and pair it with an understanding of attention. Attention systems are not designed to stay focused. They're actually designed to pick up on what's changing, on what's salient, on what's novel, on what's important, right? So they're designed to be picking up on new things in the environment that you should be shifting your attention to.
Okay.
So if you've just set aside a couple of hours to work on something really important, the stuff that makes up clutter is exactly the stuff you don't want to be surrounded by when you've got attention systems that are designed to pick up on all those things.
Right. Wow, so that's cool, man. Yeah. Okay.
It's worth it just to pile the stuff up and put it out of sight for that hour, those 2 hours. Get to it once you're fatigued. That's the stuff that doesn't need your attention as much. And if it really does need your attention, then, choose one piece of it and make that what you're dedicating your good time to. But if you've set aside time to work on something important and there's clutter that's not associated with it, you're really doing yourself a disservice by leaving it there.
Now, the title of the book, 2 Awesome Hours. I believe you're not saying that you only have to work 2 hours a day. My perception of that would be, listen, you're going to work, you can have a couple awesome hours and get a huge amount of work done, and then you can, basically manage your time better. Would that be a perceptive.
That's perfect. That's exactly right. Yeah. So, with the title 2 Awesome Hours, it could mean that. And so I sometimes get people ask me questions about, the 4-Hour Work Week, Timothy Ferriss's book. This is an approach where I'm talking about what you were describing, where it's, when we focus on setting up a couple of hours, which is very reasonable for a human being.
Yes.
In any given day, a couple of hours of really being on when we need to and making sure that we time our schedule so that the stuff that really matters we get to when we're really on. Then we can take advantage of the fact that we don't need to be on all the time and we can't be on all the time.
And then you can have a good time. You can start talking to some people and stuff. Yeah, right.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. You can. And when you do go and talk to people, my advice is commit to hanging out and then come back and commit to working, because you'll come back and you'll be more effective at work if you really let yourself just put down the computer and walk away and hang out for a little bit.
That is so cool, man. Well, listen, it was really a pleasure, man, and I think we got to get hold of you. I'd love you to come on, like, maybe once a month and give all our listeners a couple tips, right?
I would love that.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
I mean, you got to be so psyched, because this is like, you can basically change people's lives just getting them, I mean, even if they got 20 minutes of awesome time, right?
That's, you know what, for many people, that's going to be more than they had before. I absolutely agree with you. I see there's so much potential here. There's so much we can learn from the science about how to actually live a happier life and actually really get a lot of great stuff done. So this is not about just doing less and trying to convince yourself you're okay with it. It's actually understanding how to really be extraordinarily effective while having more balance in your life. And there really is a lot we can learn when we start to look at ourselves as biological creatures, understanding neuroscience and psychology research to inform that.
That's awesome, man. Well, listen, man, thanks again. Where are you located?
New York City.
New York City. It's a beautiful thing. Well, listen, you have a great one, a safe one, and we look forward to talking to you again, Josh.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, man. Okay. Bye-bye. It's 2 awesome hours, folks. Get over to Amazon right now. Science-based strategy to harness your best time and get the most amount of work done in 2 awesome hours. What a trip. I'm going to have him back. Stay right there, folks. Come right back. Dow right now is down 169. You get the NASDAQ off 6. S&P's down 8.5. We're going to break back.